Hello, greetings everyone. Welcome to the advanced workshop session on how to build failure mode effects analysis using Spira's risk management module. I am Sriram, an enterprise agile evangelist at Inflectra. If you have any questions about this session, please use the chat window for this workshop. Failure mode effects analysis is an industrial strength risk management tool. It is often abbreviated as FMEA. We will review the goals of this tool. We will identify and implement the specific type of data to build FMEA. Finally, we will review the risk register that includes this data in Spira. First, let's start off with the goals of a risk register. Shown here is an example of a risk register. As we discussed in the session on managing risk, we first identify types of risk that impact our project or product. Then we do some high-level analysis. Subsequently, we identify some basic steps to address the risk. The result is captured in a metrics form and is called a risk register. It is a critical element of how projects, programs, portfolios, and even enterprises manage risks at various levels. The risk register is an important artifact that is used widely in all industries. The goal of the risk register is to facilitate prioritization. The concepts of strategic prioritization is present in traditional, agile, and hybrid approaches. Risks can emerge from many areas. It could be something specific to a product risk, like a missed opportunity to penetrate a specific market segment or develop a specific functionality that the customer asked, or could be a project risk impacting schedule, scope, cost, and quality. By using consistent scheme for categorizing the likelihood and impact, the risk register helps with an objective approach to prioritization. Failure mode effects analysis is frequently prevalent in industries that deal with hazardous substances or with products that have catastrophic impact. For instance, when disposing waste, the handling of radioactive chemicals may pose a higher risk to the people and the environment. Similarly, the design of diagnostic instruments may prove lethal to a patient if it falls on the patient. So the impact of corrective action is too expensive and requires preventive approaches by focusing on continuous improvement. This could span many areas like design intent, build intent, test intent, and service intent, among many other things. Therefore, in addition to likelihood and impact, the failure mode effects analysis focuses on a third element called deductibility. Let's get grounded on these three elements of FMEA. First, the failure effect. It's a consequence or impact of a failure mode. The failure mode itself is a manifestation of how a component, system, subsystem, or process failed to adhere to its original intent. Perhaps the conformance to requirements was too restrictive, or the system performed beyond its original specifications. As a result, the system does not function as expected. While it is quick to call this a defect, the FMEA engages in the root causes analysis deeply, looking at the project plan, processes used, tools employed, and the capabilities, skills, and competencies of the people that worked to see what cause contributed to what extent for this failure. What type of data does FMEA need? Fundamentally, when you look at the difference between FMEA and other risk management approaches, the one main difference is how risk is computed. Generally, The approaches to risk management compute the risk exposure score. This is the product of severity and occurrence. The occurrence is associated with a probability, and severity is associated with a specific scale within the organization. Fmea extends this risk exposure score by a third dimension called deductibility, as we mentioned. In other words, which of the failure causes were even detectable and to what extent. Beware of the scales used for Fmea. It is very detailed and frequently use a 10-point scale for all the three dimensions, the severity, the occurrence, and the deductibility. Given here is a table that I have seen in the Fmea-driven initiatives. Mostly, these descriptions are at the enterprise level, but could be customized to the portfolio, program, or project as well. Each industry, company, and product will have some specific and common risks. To capture such business relevant risks, first access the admin panel. Then click on the type in the risk section. You will be presented with a familiar screen to capture business relevant risks to your product. Risk can also be associated with a specific workflow, but these will be covered in another advanced session on workflow. Once you have identified risks, you will need to document them. To do this, first access the artifact dropdown. Then select the risk under the tracking section. Then you will have the risk pane to enter the risks. Clicking on the risk entered opens the detailed risk entry pane. The most important area in this section are the probability and impact. I am sure you can see the consistent user experience across the artifacts while having specific things to the risk artifact. Impact represents the severity of the risk when it materializes. To capture such impact, first access the admin panel. Then click on the impact in the risk section. Then enter the severity of impact and the hexadecimal color code. The score is a rank associated with the impact. Higher the number, higher the impact. This will be the other element used to compute the risk exposure score. The position is used to indicate where this element should appear in the risk summary widget. By definition, risk has the probability of occurrence. The probability is one of the critical elements of the risk breakdown. To capture such probability, first access the admin panel. Then click on the probability in the risk section. Then enter the probability. Here we are looking at the qualitative probability category. The score is a rank associated with the probability. I explained the other elements already in the impact section. We now need the deductibility field, which can then be used to compute the Fmea risk priority number. To do this, we will use custom properties at the risk level. First, add a deductibility custom property. This should be a numeric field. Then multiply the risk exposure score, which is already a product of severity and occurrence, by the deductibility rating. Yes, this computation must be manual for now and gives you the Fmea RPN number. The risk register updated to include the Fmea property is now a click away. The result of all this work gives the industry accepted risk register updated to include the Fmea RPN in the risk summary report. It's demo time now. Let's demonstrate this in Spira. Okay, now we have landed on the Spira cloud instance. The Spira risk module requires SpiraPlan, and currently on the cloud instance, I do have SpiraPlan, so I can demonstrate that functionality. On my page, you see my assigned risk widget. I have brought that and it shows two different particular risks assigned to me at this point. The risk exposure are 8 and 6. And if you go into the artifact and select the risks, you see 3 risks listed over here, but I saw only 2 of them. That's primarily because I have only 2 risks assigned to me as a system administrator, and I have logged in as the system administrator. And if you take a look at the first risk, for instance, the responsive design required on multiple devices, the probability is possible, the impact is marginal, and the risk exposure score is listed as 6. So how did the risk exposure score become 6? In order for you to understand that, let's go to the admin section and look at the probability. Okay, if you look at the probability, you have certain likely, possible, unlikely, rare, and we have possible as score 3. And then if you go to the impact, you have critical, catastrophic, critical, marginal, and negligible, and marginal is associated with the score of 2. That's why 3 times 2 became 6. So now if I go back to the actual risk module again and open that particular risk, in order for you to implement the failure mode effect analysis, you need the third element. So you have the severity, which is going to be coming from impact, and you have the probability, which is associated with the occurrence. You need the third element, which is going to be deductibility. So in order for us to do that, we add a custom property. So let's go to the custom property. I'm going to open in a separate tab now. You can add a lot of custom properties to different artifacts. So I am selecting the risk specific artifact. Right now, there are nothing associated with this. That's totally fine. So let's add the deductibility here. We want to make it an integer field because it's going to be a numeric option. Under the option, you have the opportunity to actually go and say it is required or not. For now, I'm not going to make it a required field. So I'm going to basically save it as is. Deductibility is now an integer. And the other element is to actually add that RPN number, right? The Fmea RPN number. We want to have that. And that's also going to be a number here. So we will leave it as is, as an integer. Now, if I come back to my risk and refresh this, you are going to see those additional things that we added. So you have the probability, you have the impact, and now you can add the deductibility and the Fmea RPN number. Unfortunately, we don't have a lookup table for the deductibility, just like what we have for our probability and impact, because that's already one of the recognized attributes that we currently have under the risk module. And if you want to implement the Fmea, you want to have a lot more granularity for both the probability and impact and the deductibility. Now, we know the possible and marginal, although these are qualitative description. The product of this is the risk exposure score, and that's listed here already. And the deductibility is a standalone number that you are giving. So let's give the responsive design based on multiple device dimensions. Let's say this is like a 5, and that means 5 times 6 is going to be 30, because this is already a product of probability and impact. Now you multiply that with the deductibility, you get 30 as the Fmea RPN number. So you got that one. And let's go ahead and do the same thing with the other 2 risks that are listed here. And let's say there's a key developer maybe taking time off for marriage. Let's say this is no longer a maybe, it's going to be a complete certainty. We know the dates, when the person is going to be gone and all those things. So the deductibility is like very high, and the FMEA RPA number is going to be 8 times 10, which is going to be 80. Unfortunately, it's a mathematical computation. You are doing it right over here at this particular point. And let's go to the third one, which is going to be compliance. Compliance mandates double opt-in because it's really mandated. It is a complete certainty at this particular point again. And the FMEA RPA number, because it's catastrophic and certain, you have a highest number 20 here. So 20 times 10 is going to be 200. So we have updated these things. So if you recall, you get a 10-point scale for probability, impact, and detectability. So the maximum you can get is 10 times 10 times 10, which is going to be 1000. Okay. So I have done this. Now let's go back to the risk list where all the lists were listed over here. So if you bring that view, you get to see the impact and exposure here. You don't get to see the other things, but you can definitely quickly add those elements as well. So if you come here and say, I want to see the deductibility, and I also want to see the FMEA RPA number, that information comes straight over here. So you get the deductibility that we entered and the actual FMEA that we computed. All those numbers are listed right over here. Okay. Now let's run the reporting and bring up the risk summary report. I'm clicking on this risk summary report right now. Okay. For now, I'm going to use the HTML report, but you could definitely do the Excel as well. So let's go down and run the report. So the report is now already available. So this is this register, including the FMEA information. So you have the risk, the specific details about the risk, the probability and impact, and the risk exposure score, the type of the risk, what type of risk that you have captured, and what status currently it is in, who is assigned to actually work on that, who owns it, and if you have specific components associated with that, that information is there. Updates that were made, when it was created, and what updates have been made. The detectability and FMEA number is also listed here. And you may wonder, like, okay, I want to have this detectability and FMEA number to be in a different position within this. But if you use Microsoft Excel, you are going to just move those columns very quickly. But if you do want to use this as an HTML format itself or have a different ordering scheme, you can use the custom reporting functionality available where you can order those columns very easily as well. Okay, that brings us close to how we can build FMEA within the risk module available in Spira. Let's get back to our presentation. Great. In summary, we reviewed the failure mode effect analysis in the context of additional data and scales used. We reviewed how we can incorporate FMEA using Spira's risk management module. We built the risk register, including the additional data for FMEA. Thanks for joining me today on this advanced workshop. Please check out other advanced sessions in this workshop.